Bonjour, welcome to Stars on the Rocks Part 3. The third and last ancient observatory that I want to talk about, the Nazca geoglyphs down in Peru. Absolutely fascinating. I don't know if you've heard of them or you may have heard of them and have forgotten about them, but essentially these are etchings in the desert of an extremely arid region. So arid they only receive about 2 inches of rain every 2 years. So it's extremely arid. So these etchings in this very, very arid region are, when those etchings are out there, because it's so dry, they stay there for hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. So these Nazca geoglyphs are these huge etchings on the landscape that can be up to over 100 feet or more. There are others that are even several hundred feet across. And these are etchings typically of animals like the hummingbird or spider monkey. There's one of a flower. There's one of a human-like figure. But they are only fully visible from 1,000 feet up in the air. So you can't see all of it at once unless you're 1,000 feet up in the air. These lines, and you'll see here, you should be seeing here with these pictures, they're very precise, very geometrical, and they match the type of figures and the type of geometry that's on other Nazca cultural items like their pottery. So they're extremely interesting, and how they formed them as they went along and they cleared out any of the loose rock or dirt that was there, and they cleared out that loose rock and dirt to reveal the lighter rock and dirt that lies beneath. These are very precise lines formed over large areas, creating specific figures or shapes. And these shapes over this vast region are interspersed with a lot of other geometric shapes like diagonal lines and spirals and that sort of thing. So it's a huge mystery. People have a difficult time today figuring out, how did people etch these into the landscape like this? How did this happen? How did it come about, and how did they do it so precisely? Maybe because we have an imperfect understanding of people's capabilities from long ago cultures. The Nazca culture is dated as having existed between 300 BC and 700 AD, so that makes it having existed between 2,300 years ago and 1,300 years ago. So we're talking a couple of thousand years here. According to Gregory Cajete, who wrote a wonderful book called Native Science, and I highly recommend it to anybody who's interested in native science. And he also actually has a chapter in there on native astronomy, and he calls Native American astronomies the ultimate native science because they combine all cultural knowledge, all of these various facets of each Native American culture, each of that body of knowledge that each culture has. You can find all those facets within that culture's astronomy. So he calls Native American astronomies the ultimate Native American sciences. Anyway, he describes these Nazca geoglyphs, in his words, he says that they are likely a giant visual calendar with which the Nazca, like other native cultures, entered into a dialogue with the stars. And what he means by that is, if we take a look and we get down with the geoglyphs, where you get down at the ground level and you walk these, and these trail lines, as you walk them, you find that they trace out and mark the equinoxes and the solstices. So different ones are going to be lining up with the different solstices and the different equinoxes, the 2 different equinoxes. The figures also appear to correspond with star groupings or constellations in the sky. Maybe not some of the constellations that we identify, like we say, oh, that group of stars, and we see them clustered there together, and then different cultures come up with different names for them. Some of those are also found with these geoglyphs, and others are other groupings of stars. So they've used a computer to kind of match up the geoglyphs with star groupings in the night sky. Some of the trail lines relate to, if you follow the trail lines, they relate to the procession of the constellations as it goes through the seasons. So different constellations, of course, are going to be in the sky at different times of the year. And these trail lines that form these figures seem to trace that procession of constellations as best as people can figure out at this point in time. Even more amazingly, the lines that were drawn here, these etchings, were apparently adjusted over the generations. If you remember when we were talking about Mong the Loon and Gwaedenanon, or the North Star there, I told you how what we see as the North Star, Gwaedenanon, has not always been the North Star. It's not always been the one that's been due north there. That 4,000 years ago, there was a different Gwaedenanon, a different North Star, or one that could give you guidance for what was north, because the axis of our Earth wobbles. And so every 26,000 years, that's like a cycle that the axis of the Earth goes through. And evidently, over the couple of thousand years that these geoglyphs were here, people adjusted them to accommodate the change in the placement of the stars in the night sky. Amazing. Hey, how many of us even realized that the stars change gradually over, several thousand years here, much less make adjustments for it in our ceremonial life or any other type of aspects of our life, of our lives. So they adjusted the lines, they made adjustments as needed to correlate the stars to where they would be as stars changed over the generations. Wow. Okay. Gregory Cajete again says perhaps the Nazca used their geoglyphs like the Inca used some of their ceremonial trails, and that is the Inca would walk ceremonial lines to commemorate the solstices, equinoxes, and other major sky events. And so he theorizes that perhaps that's what the Nazca did too. That's what they might have used these geoglyphs for. So those hummingbirds, the spider, the monkey, the llama, flower, so many more there. You can see it here with Google Earth I'm going to start out far here, and then you can zoom in and you can see the little dots, the little lines, or the little pointers that tell you what different geoglyphs are being shown there, and then you kind of get the sense of how large of an area is being covered by this complex of figures and geometric of like animal-like figures, plant figures, and human-like figures, and then the spirals and geometric lines that are in there. And then I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see a couple of them up close.